Hello everyone, my name is Benfang Wang. I'm a certified full-time online Chinese teacher and I have been teaching Chinese for over 11 years. My YouTube channel is Chinese with Ben, where I constantly post a lot of videos about Chinese self-study tips, and I also do live streaming lessons and interviews in order to help the intermediate and advanced students to move their Chinese to the next level. Today my talk is about how to turbocharge your Chinese level by watching the best TV series. Watching TV series is definitely a fantastic self-study tool, but the question is how to watch it right. But before that, I would like to share you with a joke. This joke is about the word is in Chinese language. The word is in Chinese has many meanings. But generally, without the context, the very first meaning pop up in our head will be the meaning. So now let's start it with this joke together. When a businessman wanted to bribe a Chinese officer, he brought a gift and went to the officer's house and said, 不好意思，这是我的一点小意思. The literal translation of this sentence is, excuse me, this is merely a small meaning. Without context, it can be a little bit confusing. But with the context, let's think about the background of the two speakers. One person is the businessman, the other person is the officer. The officer has some power that the businessman can take advantage of. Of course, the businessman doesn't want to be too direct and says, hey, I want to bribe you. Instead, he will try to be very indirect by saying, this is merely a small meaning, and we can interpret this small meaning as, this is my gift to you, this is my contribution to you. After hearing this, then the officer said fiercely and rejected him, 你这是什么意思? The literal meaning of this sentence is, what's the meaning? But with the angry tone of this officer, we can interpret this sentence as, what the hell are you doing? And then the businessman replied humbly with, 没什么意思，就是意思意思. The literal translation of this sentence is nothing particularly, just want to meaning. Again, what does this meaning mean? In Chinese, 意思意思 means to send you my regard, to show you the sign of goodwill. It's not going to be a big deal and I'm not going to tell anyone. It's just to show you my appreciation. In Chinese culture, we do have this custom, the way of doing things. When someone is doing you a favor, we would like to give a gift to show our appreciation. But this doesn't mean, like in this joke, it's something illegal. It's to bribe someone. No. It could be that one day your neighbor helped you to receive a package, and in return, you give your neighbor a dish that you cooked by yourself to show that you are being thankful to him or her. So with this context, let's go back to this joke. In the end, the officer finally agreed, took the gift and said, 好吧，那我就不好意思了. The literal translation is, fine, then excuse me. Here, the excuse me we can interpret as, then I will take it without shame. Of course, the officer doesn't want to admit that, okay, I'm publicly accepting your gift. So he will say, excuse me instead. Well, this is the joke. What do you think? If we only look at those sentences, the literal translations, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But on the other hand, if we take everything into consideration, the tones, the stress, the facial expressions, the hand gestures, the background of the two speakers, the way of doing things, and the general values accepted by the society, we can find out that it actually makes a lot of sense. This is because Chinese is a high context of culture. According to Edward T. Howe, he divided the words culture in two categories, the high context culture and the low context culture. He used the difference between the high and the low context culture to explain the diversity of the words culture and the position and the role of the language and the context in those two cultures are very different. On one hand, the high context culture is formed by a relatively fixed long-term communication environment. For example, people living in Asian, African, Latin American countries, geographically in history we don't move a lot and we live together with other people. We share the same customs, same traditions, and our conversation is strongly influenced by the common value that's shared by everyone. Therefore, before we communicate with other people, we already have the shared value, the morality, and the tradition and the customs with the other person. So we do not mainly rely on the language itself. We already have the context. And also the communication information doesn't have to be so clear and so implicit. Sometimes the facial impressions, the hand gestures, and even the silence can convey the message. On the other hand, the communication in the low context cultures, such as English, American, German, and Scandinavian cultures, it mainly rely on the coding information of the language itself, which means the information has to be explicit and the communication information has to be clear, direct, logical enough in order to let the other party understand better. This is how the communication is within the high context culture and the low context culture. However, if someone from the low context culture talks with someone from the high context culture, there could be some misunderstandings. For example, many people from the low context culture thinks that people who are being indirect can be very rude and disrespectful. Whereas in the high context culture, people are just trying to avoid the awkward situation, maintain the environment peacefully and friendly, and try to protect the face and the public image of the other party. For example, in China, if the Chinese person A want to do business with the Chinese person B, but B is not interested, but B won't directly tell A that I'm not interested. Instead, B will tell A, let me think about it. I will contact you in the future. A and B, they are both the Chinese businessmen. They both know how to do business in China. Therefore, with this context, with the internalized rules, A knows exactly what does B's answer mean, and A knows that there's no possibilities for them to do business in the future. But however, if a foreigner from a low context culture hears the same answer, let me think about it, I will contact you in the future, then this person will very probably take this answer very seriously and think that okay, there is a hope that I may cooperate with this person in the future. But in the end, when the foreigner find out about the truth that there's not going to be a future between them, the foreigner will get super angry and furious about it. There's a sentence I like a lot, which is, culture is an iceberg and we mostly work with the tip. Sometimes when we are learning a language, we are only focusing on the superficial part, the part that above the ocean. However, at the same time, we should also dig deeper and see the true values behind that culture, especially with those high context cultures. If you are not living in China, I believe it's really difficult for you to find out the true values in Chinese culture. Therefore, I think watching Chinese TV shows is an efficient way, a shortcut for you to understand Chinese culture better. After all, the communication in China is very high context based. With the TV shows, you can see exactly what the context is. At the same time, you will be also able to understand the Chinese culture, the customs, the way of doing things better. For example, in China, people feel responsible for our family. We value the concept of a face, the strong public image. And also, if a member's face is threatened, the whole group's honor is in danger. By watching the stories of Chinese TV series, you will certainly understand the features of Chinese culture better. So here will be our next question. How do we watch the Chinese TV series right? I will share with you one super self-study tip for watching Chinese TV series, which is to watch each episode for 4 times. The first time, only focus on the story with the English subtitle or your native language if possible. This is because sometimes when we are watching a TV series, we are really easy to get distracted by the story. We want to keep watching and not focusing on study. So the first time, just see the story so that when you watch for the second, third, or fourth time, you won't distracted by the story because you already knew what happened. You will only focus on studying the contents. When you watch for the second time, please read the Chinese subtitle sentence by sentence. This means that the second time when you watch, when you see a Chinese sentence, stop and then check the dictionary every time when there's a new word. When you fully understand each sentence, then you move on to the next sentence. Make sure you understand everything in this episode. The third time is to watch the show again with the Chinese subtitles. And this time, when you're watching the show, you are at the same time reading the Chinese subtitles. So you only stop when you feel it's necessary. Because sometimes, even after we check the meaning, we remembered for the first time, then later on we may forget. So this time, when you check it for the second time, it will strengthen your memory for this word. And the fourth time, just to watch all over again without any subtitle. The fourth time is mainly focused on practicing your listening skill because you have already done the reading part when you were watching the show for the second and the third time. Now it's time for you to test yourself by listening to it. You are able to read something doesn't mean that when you hear it, you will also be able to understand it. Therefore, the fourth time is really important for you to train your ear and also to test yourself to see if you have mastered what you did for the previous steps. And now I'm going to share with you some details and practical studying tools for you to fully utilize your studying time while watching the show for 4 times. Alright, remember that the first time when we watch the show, we mainly focus on the story, preferably with English subtitle. The Chinese TV shows on iQIYI and Netflix, of course, they will have the English subtitle. As for the YouTube channels, here are my recommendations for watching the Chinese TV series. But be careful, not all of the videos in those channels have an English subtitle. You have to pay attention to each video and to see under each video if they have a CC mark. If you have this blue CC mark, and it means that it has some subtitles. And then when you start watching an episode, you can click the CC icon on the bottom right corner, and then it will show you the list of subtitles. After that, you can choose English so that the English subtitle will show up on your screen. In addition, I strongly recommend you this website called Graded Watching. It's created by Wilhelm, who did a lot of efforts and a lot of amazing work to grade all the Chinese TV series. In this website, you can see this table on your screen. This table lists 89 TV series and 46 movies in Chinese, ordered by difficulty. What's more, if you click the number of the words column, you will be able to download the flashcards of that TV show. And those flashcards are compatible with Pleco, so which will save you a lot of time for making those flashcards. Okay, now let's move to step 2. The second time when we are watching the show, we have to read the Chinese subtitle sentence by sentence. And each time we encounter a new word, we will look up the dictionary. So this step we can either do the traditional way by writing down all the new vocabularies on the notebook along with the meaning and the example sentences. Or we can use the online flashcard tool such as Anki, Quizlet, Polyglot, and Scritter so that it's easy for you to review those words on your laptop and your mobile phone. Besides, there's also another amazing tool called the Language Reactor. This is a Google Chrome browser extension. Once you have this extension installed on your browser, then you can either open a video on your Netflix or you can find a video on YouTube. But please make sure that you see this CC blue icon in the description part of your video. And then once you start watching an episode, on the bottom of this video, you will have this part where you can turn on the language reactor. Once you turn on the language reactor, then go to the bottom right of your video and find the CC icon. After you click the CC icon, choose subtitle and change the subtitle to Chinese simplified or Chinese traditional, depends on what you are learning right now. After you have done all the previous steps, you will have your screen like this. On the left side, you are still watching the TV series, but the Chinese character subtitles are becoming much bigger. And on top of the Chinese characters, you can find the pinyin. And on the right side, you will be able to see the list of all the subtitle tests of this episode. And here you can randomly choose a subtitle sentence you would like to learn, and the video will directly lead you to the minute of that sentence. We all know that in a TV series, sometimes one sentence and another sentence, in between there may be a time gap. The good thing about the tool language reactor is that it can automatically eliminate the time gap between the two sentences. For example, if you are practicing one sentence, you can click the S key on your keyboard. Every time you click S, it will repeat the sentence again. Repeat it over and over until you master it. If you are ready to move on, you can just click the key D on your keyboard. It will jump directly to your next sentence so that you don't have to waste the time for the gap between the two sentences. Also, you can tap A on your keyboard to review your last sentence. What's more, with language reactor, if you have a new word that you don't know in a subtitle, you just directly use your mouse to click that word. And then on the screen, you will be able to see the meaning for this word and along with a lot of example sentences. If you click the speaker icon on the top right, you will be also able to hear the AI sound for this word. And also on the right side, on the right top corner, if you click this icon, you will be also able to export the Excel of all the subtitles. The Excel table includes the characters, the pinyin, and the English translation. So which is also very useful for you to print out and review by yourself on the paper. And then for the third time and the fourth time watching the show, there's not much to add on, but here I would like to recommend you one website called ief.tv. The reason I recommend this website is that when you're watching a Chinese TV series, you will see those floating text on the screen. Those floating text on the screen has a name called 弹幕, the bullet screen. 弹幕, the bullet screen means the real-time commenting from the other viewers. So when someone watching the same scene as you, they like to share their opinions. They just tap this comment on the screen. This function is interesting because sometimes we feel lonely that we watch the show alone, no one else discussing the story with us. Or maybe you are just simply curious about how Chinese people comment on the same scene that you just see on the screen. But of course, sometimes there are characters in the bullet screen that you don't recognize. That's not a problem. Just download this Chrome extension called Zhongwen Chinese English Pop-up Dictionary. And once you installed this extension, just put your mouse on top of the bullet screen, and then it will show you the pinyin and the meaning of that word you don't know. What's more, you can also easily make flashcards with this extension, and the flashcards you made can be easily added to your Anki. Last but not least, here are my recommendations for the Chinese TV series. On the first page, I've chosen these 5 TV series called 都挺好, All is Well, 30而已, Nothing but 30, 我们的婚姻 Modern Marriage, 安家 I Will Find You a Better Home, 爱很美味 Delicious Romance. The reason I chose these 5 TV series because they are all about white collars work, love, and marriage life. So the vocabularies and the sentences in those TV series are all very practical and close related to our everyday life, so which you can use immediately after you watching the TV series. But the problem of those TV series is that it's about white collar, so their life is not that down to the earth. It's more like floating in the air. If you are interested in ordinary people's life, then I will recommend you to watch these 3 TV shows. The first one is 亲爱的小孩 Left Right, which is just released this year, this month. And then 乔家的儿女 The Bond, 我是余欢水 If There's No Tomorrow. 亲爱的小孩 is about the story that how a family was changed after a baby was born. Those details and the story are so real that you can feel the stress when you're watching it. It's a little bit depressed, but it's definitely worth watching. Also, I would like to point out that my generation, my parents, and my grandparents, the 3 generations, every generation we are living a very distinct and different life from each other because there were so many things going on in the past 100 years in China. For example, in 1949 was the founding of the People's Republic of China, and in 1956 the 3 great transformations were accomplished. In 1966 the Cultural Revolution started, and it ended in the 1976. And in the 1978 we started to implement the reform and the opening up policy. And then on the 1990s, employees laid off by the state-owned enterprise and entrepreneurship rises. So there were many things going on in China, and each time one thing happens, there will be a big change in society. Therefore, we also have many TV series reflecting a person or a couple or a family, how their life was changed by those national events in the history. For example, 父母爱情, the romance of our parents, covered all the events that I mentioned earlier. And the TV series 人世间, A Lifelong Journey, is a new TV series from this year. This story is started from the Cultural Revolution, started with the policy that sent down youth to the countryside during the Cultural Revolution. So this family, they have 3 kids, but in order to accord with this policy, they can only keep 1 child at home and let the other 2 kids all go to the countryside of another province. It was a very tough history at that moment. It's really interesting to watch these family members, how they split and reunited, and how each character developed their own story. The next show called 温州一家人 Family on the Go. This show is very interesting because, as some of you may know, nowadays many overseas countries, there are many Chinese immigrants. They started their own company, and the owner all comes from Wenzhou. It's a very unique TV series that I recommend everyone to watch. What's more, before the founding of the People's Republic of China, the history was more chaotic with the civil war and the other nations invading China. So if you are interested in the story that happened between the Opium War and the War of Liberation, here are the three shows I strongly recommended to you. The first one is 乔家大院, Qiao's Grand Courtyard. It's about the merchant Qiao's family, how they ran the business between the Opium War and the eight power aligned forces invaded Beijing. On the other side, we have Bai Lu Yuan, White Deer Plain. It's a story happened between the end of the Qing dynasty until the anti-Japanese war, the War of Liberation. I love this story so much because also the three generations in this story, they are all living different life because in this short period of history in China, there were so many dramatic changes in society. This is definitely an amazing story for you to understand the Chinese culture and history better. Last but not least, 大宅门, the Grand Mansion Gate. It's happened between the Emperor Guangxu period all the way to the September 18th incident and the Lugouqiao incident when the Japanese invaded China. The next one is the Chinese education. If you want to know the current Chinese people better, you have to know how we grew up, how our education was. So there are three TV series about Chinese education, which are 小欢喜, A Little Reunion, 小舍得, A Love for Dilemma, and 小别离, A Love for Separation. Those are new shows, so which you can easily find on the YouTube channels with the English and Chinese subtitle. After you watch these three TV shows, I believe you will feel sorry for the Chinese kids because we were just like starting machines in school. And you may understand why China decided to ban the tutoring class outside of school. This is totally a good policy to give the children more freedom to play, to enjoy their childhood. If you are a suspense lover, then I recommend you these three TV series called 摩天大楼, A Murderous Affair in Horizon Tower, 隐秘的角落, The Bad Kids, and 开端 Reset from this year. The stories are so good, you will get addicted, but make sure you watch 4 times for each episode before you watch the next one. If you are a law crime drama lover, then you can watch 猎狐 Hunting or 人民的名义 In the Name of People. Or if you are learning Taiwanese Mandarin, you can watch 我们与恶的距离 The World Between Us or 华灯初上 Light the Night. These two are very high-score Taiwan-made TV series, which I also recommend you to watch. In the end of my talk, I would like to tell you, don't give up. And make sure you watch each episode 4 times before you watch the next one. I know it's a lot of work, it will be a tough time to do this process, but you will benefit a lot from your hard work. One last tip is to find people who can encourage you to watch the Chinese TV series. There are many Chinese learners, they are posting their notes on the social media such as Instagram, such as the Lingbrew and the Language Louise. By watching the progress they made, it can encourage you to study more, to make more efforts. Alright, that's everything I would like to share today. If you would like to know more Chinese self-study tips, please follow my YouTube channel Chinese with Ben, and I will see you in my channel. 谢谢大家，再见。